Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners and Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful May the 26th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, is wet and warm down here. We got the humidity flying up from all this rain that we get, but I'd like to thank the frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, first responders for the admirable job that you've been doing and keep doing.
They always do an admirable job, Big C. We want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, Big C Sports is powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Really appreciate our Veterans Crisis Hotline. Really had a great appreciation for this Memorial Day weekend, Big C, and I know that we always give out our Veterans Crisis Hotline. Why is that so important to you?
Well, it's important, Charlton, because just like the Memorial Day weekend, the Veterans Day is every day of the year, Charlton, where we have some 22 veterans a day in America succumbing to suicide. This horrific disease is one of those pandemics that no one really pays attention to. I know we give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number as well as the website and text number, Charlton, but we got to find a way to get it in the arms and the hands of more veterans. As many veterans don't have access to electronic devices, Charlton, when their home is the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And we have to find ways, along with our national government, to make this more of a prevalent point in America, that the veterans matter in America. And not just lip service, but some phone service.
It always makes sense, Big C. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and they can get some help. Really appreciate all the way that people were honoring our fallen veterans over the Memorial Day weekend. Really love being a part of that, Big C. Also happen to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T, Uverse TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. Just tell them Big C Central. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's did it. Car dealerships do it, and you can watch sports teams soon back in action, and you can let TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see opportunities. So much has happened over this Memorial Day weekend. I want to ask you what you did over the weekend. I spent a lot of time, because it was about 100 degrees here in California. I spent a lot of time inside. Outside, I went out and watered the lawn late at night, but for the most part, I was inside, Big C. How was it down south for you good old boys?
Well, the lawn's been self-watering down here day and night, Charlton. We've had a deluge of moisture down here in the south. It's a very comfortable, relaxing weekend, and giving thanks and prayers to the Memorial Day families, Charlton, that, served this country so admirably and have lost loved ones and stuff, Charlton. But it was a pretty relaxing weekend overall.
It was a relaxing weekend overall. I want to say something, too. I know sometimes people do things to grandstand, or if you're out and about and you see someone that has a military hat, people tend to say, sometimes they say nothing. They just keep walking. You don't know if they bought the hat at a local store or if they really served for this great country of ours. But when I saw that there were still some people that had served this country, and that hit 100 years old, and you'll see local stories about that on the news. I think sometimes we have so much going on in our own lives that all we see is that man in the mirror, that person that's in the mirror looking back, or that woman in the mirror, or that child in the mirror. But I realize we never have to fight for anything other than just getting up, taking care of what you own. Veterans put their lives on the line for people to be able to do whatever we do throughout the day. I really appreciate that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, so many people are just in survival mode in this country, Charlton. We have a war within our own borders if you look at just surviving. And not from this pandemic, but just everyday life and struggle in America. Especially being a black man in America, Charlton, is almost a death sentence when you look at it. If you look at the incident that happened in Minneapolis yesterday, where a police officer put his knee on the neck of a black man who was handcuffed on the ground for 5 minutes, and the man succumbed. The man died from that, Charlton, and the police said, well, he was resisting arrest, even though the police officer was filmed for 10 minutes with his knee in his neck, and he couldn't get up. He kept telling him to get in the back of the car. He said, if you let me up, I'll get up. I can't breathe. So when you think about those things, Charlton, it's sobering in America.
You know, I didn't even know about that. The last thing that I had paid attention to this was the Ahmaud Arbery that happened, a couple of months ago, but didn't really get a lot of attention until about a week ago.
This was a horrific incident, Charlton. It happened yesterday in Minneapolis, where citizens were standing there asking the police officer to take his knee off of the black man's neck because he couldn't breathe, and you could hear the man asking. It reminded a lot of people of Eric Gardner several years ago in New York saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And this man kept asking this officer that for 5 minutes, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And yet the officer in his report said that the man was resisting arrest.
Really?
Even though he was handcuffed down on the ground, his partner just stood by, uninterested, watching, making sure traffic went around. Instead of them putting him in the back of the car, and they arrested the man for alleged forgery. It was a non-violent crime that they were arresting for, alleged forgery, and it cost him his life being black.
That's interesting. So let me ask you something, and I don't know the answer to this myself, but I know my father served in the military. My father was in the Air Force. I have a brother who was in the Army, a nephew in the Marines, and then many other friends that have served in the armed forces. And I know you're in the Jim Crow state, so maybe I don't want to seem naive here in California. People at least smile at you in California. They may not like you, but they're cordial. I don't know what it's like down south, but I do know they have some memorials where people, I think Oprah Winfrey did a story on one, but this happened did you say happened in Michigan, Big C, your thoughts?
Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Okay, that's Prince territory. Well, let me just get your feeling. I don't know the answer. We don't speak for everybody, but do you think, when I hear Memorial Day weekend, I think about my relatives. I think about everyone that served this country, and it's like I think about everybody, if that makes sense. Do you think that and maybe we can't answer this, do races, say black and white, see Memorial Holiday different, if that makes any sense? Big C, your thoughts?
Racists see racism every day, Charlton, and that's what this was. This was a racial act. This was a man crying for his life, pleading to let him up off the ground. He wanted to get in the back of the police car. He stated this for 5 minutes. He was telling this white police officer that he could not breathe. This white police officer kept telling him, get your black ass in the back of the car.
Really?
That's what he kept telling him. He said, if you let me up, I will. And he had handcuffs on him, Charlton. He had his face up against the tire. He had his knee in the back of his neck, putting full body weight on the back of the man's neck. And even when the paramedics showed up, the paramedics had to force the police officer off of the man that was on the ground to get him on the gurney, Charlton. He was still not willing to let him up. And they will say anything that they can, even with the video. We didn't see what happened initially till the video started running. But here was a man who willingly took another man's life. And even when the paramedics showed up in a time to help somebody, they had to force the police officer off of the man's neck because he was still not willing to get up off of the man's neck. This was malicious act by this police officer.
Wow, that's interesting because I just wasn't aware of that. Maybe I didn't watch a lot of news or read a lot over the weekend. I was just kind of relaxing and trying to avoid the heat as much as possible. Give me a feeling that we always say, as I hear so many other people now giving out the National Suicide Hotline on the sports programs. I know that you started doing that about a year ago. I hear people do it now. And I just wanted, and I don't know the answer, but this is why I'm asking the question. I don't know everything. How is the conversation going forward for African Americans, Black Lives Matter? What can we talk about that? But what is a white perspective? And I don't know if you could speak to that. But you're in the South. You're where the Jim Crow states, were. And is there a perspective you can share that maybe comes from white brethren about how they can help get rid of this garbage? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, if white people cared about Black Lives Matter, the conversation wouldn't have to be had. If you talk about things, you have to mention things that is an equal term about everybody. When they're saying Black Lives Matter, Charlton, that's people protesting about somebody taking someone's life unjustifiably, Charlton, just like this police officer did yesterday. There will be excuses for this police officer. They will investigate it, put him on academic leave, but does anybody ever walk around and say white lives matter, Charlton, when they have control that they can do what they want to do? They can walk around with guns. They can shoot a black person on the street. They can choke a black man out on the street, Charlton. They can drag a black man down the street with a rope on the back of a pickup. And think about it. If blacks started to do against white lives in America what whites do against black lives, if they started shooting whites on the street, Charlton, just randomly, if black police officers started taking white, people and cuff them up and put their knee in the back of their neck on the street until they can't breathe, till they succumb to that. If 5 black police officers take a white, pedestrian and choke him down on the ground and saying, well, he's resisting arrest. If those things start happening on the news and we start seeing videos of those things, it would be a different perspective in society. But, Charlton, I think that black people have more respect for white people than vice versa. White people feel that they're being challenged in America in every light. We do sports shows, and we think about how blacks have challenged whites in sports, where segregation took place for hundreds of years in America, not allowing black people to have a part of America. The Voting Rights Act, and even the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act a few years ago because they wanted to take power away from black people, having them have a say-so in what government does. So as long as we have politics, we will never have equality in America. When you look at the voter suppression that goes along in America, what white society continuously tries to do is demonize and take away any authority or growth that black society has, other than in sports. They will admire you every day as long as you're dribbling a basketball or catching a football or hitting a baseball. You're okay with that because you're not a threat. You're actually in an arena. You're caged up during that time. You're surrounded by the majority of white people. So they even have the dominance when it comes to a sporting event because they have the majority of the population in that.
Yeah, I know sometimes when people boo, they can boo, and they buy tickets to boo and cheer whatever they want to do. But I want to ask your thoughts too, because on this Memorial Day weekend, people gave their lives, and it's not a sweeping indictment of all white people or all black people. It's just pejoratively speaking. But I want to get your thoughts too, because again, you're down south where they're itching to start sports again to see, people entertain them again. And it's happening out here too, but it's more religious, if that makes sense down south. So when we see Black Lives Matter and we have people like LeBron, or it could be a Steph Curry or the late Muhammad Ali, anybody that stands up and says, let's not do this. Have we ever noticed that maybe our white Americans, even the ones who are good-hearted and the ones that really, really want to make a difference and they don't want racism to exist, they don't believe in that garbage even though they see it. Have we come to a point where we'll get groups of white Americans that will stand up like the Me Too movement? Women stood up and said, it happened to me too. Do we have a solution that maybe white Americans can address those same ills? Because if it comes from the mouth in the face of someone who looks like the perpetrator, maybe it would sink in more. That makes any sense to you?
Well, you have to be willing to do that. Nobody's holding white society back from going out saying Black Lives Matter, that these things are no longer acceptable from our political leaders on down. And until our political and civic leaders start saying that this is totally unacceptable, that Black lives do matter, and we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to prosecute you as the criminal when you do something, and we see it on video. It's unjust. This has been going on for decades, and as long as just black people are saying Black Lives Matter, there's not enough white people that are going to care. The occasional one that you see on the news that says something. We have a president that personifies racism and bigotry in this country, not just towards black, but anybody who is not white. And that's what he says. They're all fine people, regardless whether they're Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis. They're all fine people.
Yeah.
But he's not saying that about Black Americans. He's not saying that about Hispanic Americans. He's not saying that about Asian Americans. But he'll say that about every anti-social group that is white in America.
You know, ironically, I want to draw just an analogy when they had the Me Too movement out in Los Angeles, and the great Oprah Winfrey, who's just brilliant, she came out to Hollywood and she gave a speech, and she got a rousing applause from Hollywood, which has had its own bigotry and pseudo-racism, other than a handful of people that they allow to rise to the top. That's decided by people. But I've never known where you would have, well, I can't say, there have been some. Michael Moore is a brilliant man, Caucasian man, and he wrote a book about Black Lives Matter, and just so many things that have happened. But it would be interesting if we had some prominent white Americans that were not running for the Oval Office to just speak to white Americans, at least the ones that have that hatred. Again, not putting everybody in one group. Don't want that happening to me. But it would be interesting if we had someone that would stand up and do that.
You got 50 states in America, Charles. Yeah. Every governor spoke up during this pandemic about stay-at-home, separation order and all this.
Yeah.
You think all those governors haven't had a chance since their governorcy to step up and say Black Lives Matter? If they can talk about lives matter during this pandemic, they could equally say Black Lives Matter. And blacks have been hit the hardest during this pandemic because they have less of economics and medical care during this time. So when you talk about the Me Too movement, where do you think the Me Too movement came from? It came off of civil rights.
Yeah.
The Me Too movement is a coattail of Black Lives Matter. They just, as long as they put white faces on it that said Me Too, it was okay.
Yeah.
But if they had went in there and said Black Lives Matter as well as Me Too, no one would have listened.
You know, I remember having a private conversation with a very prominent Caucasian woman who works around a lot of athletes, and we were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's interesting how she was saying, well, we don't want to call it Black Lives Matter, we want to say all lives matter, but she's white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she works.
And just the point I'm trying to make it, until you get prominent white people to say that Black Lives Matter, they don't want to be sitting there saying, well, you're kowtowing up with these people.
Yeah.
You're being empathetic, It's just like what people would say in the 50s and 60s when a white person seemed to have empathy towards a black. They were given the in-lover word all the time. And so, having their houses bombed and windows broken out of.
Yeah.
And we're still even in that phase today in society, Charlton, as it's cried to get athletics back. It's saying that Black lives don't matter. When you want to talk about athletics, it's telling the world, especially here in America, that Black lives don't matter. We need to get those boys back out there playing.
Yeah.
We need to have entertainment. It's almost like the minstrel shows they used to have.
Yeah.
We need to have these black guys out there entertaining us because life is boring without them doing stuff. And that's just where it is. So Black lives don't matter. If you're dying to get the black athletes back out there during the pandemic, and you have no way of keeping them safe, you can never come up to anybody in America and say Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and she happened to be a Caucasian woman, and she loves black men. But at the same time, she doesn't want to stand up too much because it hurts her among the white men that helped her get to the level that she's at. And that's her own opinion. That's her story. I just believe, again,
she's living life, Charlton, and she's telling the truth.
Yeah.
You think about this if you're a white woman and you're in a relationship with a black man and you end up with a mulatto child, your opportunities to succeed in life in a relationship after that are less than 20% unless you go out and find another African-American man, because a white man generally doesn't want to be in that situation where he's raising a black man's child. So that's just how it is.
Well, I think that's interesting. That's a different perspective, obviously. That's
a factual perspective. You can pull up the numbers on that. There's statistics on that.
Yeah, but whoever took those stats didn't talk to every single person, and stats can be used to be jaded also.
They're looking at the women with the children, okay? That's the one. And those women with the children that were in the survey. So they talked to the people with the children, and that's how they did the survey.
I was watching this program. It's on BET. It's called The Oval, and it's produced by Tyler Perry. And it's gripping. They have the satire is a white president, but he has a black wife. It's an arranged marriage. And I know people want to hear about who won the game, and that's their choice. But it talked about race and just the thing that you just brought up. And it was about how in society, white men, and then pejoratively speaking, and I can't speak for everybody because there's a lot of good, decent people no matter what they look like on the outside. But there are a lot of times where white men, in order to have, say, a black woman, if that makes sense, they want what's called like the cream of the crop, and someone who had to be, had it going on, whatever it is. Maybe that sounds ridiculous, but if you watch that show called The Oval, it patterns that same thing, but it made the black woman angry, even though she's rich and she's beautiful, and they gave her this knucklehead of a white dude who was a country bumpkin that they put a suit and tie on him. But it's still, and this is Tyler Perry. I don't know if it's his own story or if he found it from research, but they made the black woman so pretty and so beautiful and powerful, but they made her angry. The white guy was a knucklehead but got away with things. Do you see that part of what Tyler Perry did to mirror society, Big C? Your thoughts?
It is society, Charlton. I mean, what can't you get away with? If you look at the Arbery shooting in Georgia several months ago, Charlton, you had three white guys that killed a black man running him down the street, and they got away with it.
Yeah.
Stupid, unintelligent, but they were white. In a white community, they could shoot a black man, and they could cover it up. Even the police chief was a part of it, as well as the district attorney.
Yeah.
So the black man had no rights. But these white guys started a lie, and that lie went 3 months before the Georgia Bureau of Investigations got involved.
Yeah.
Just like the incident in Minneapolis yesterday, when the white police officer chokes out a black man on the street with his knee in his throat and kills him, and even the paramedics had to struggle to get the police officer off of the guy, and the guy had already lost consciousness because he stopped talking and nobody heard anything from him anymore. He still continued to apply pressure to the man's throat. And so when you talk about this satire show on television, you take images on television when you create shows from life's actual workings.
Yeah.
And so to take this situation where this guy is given the best of everything because of his skin complexion, but yet he's the weakest one in the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that movie was speaking to me on so many different levels. Tyler Perry's brilliant. I really think he's a brilliant man and realized what he came up through. And I remember this thing because we talk about race and Memorial Day weekend, and does it really mean something for black soldiers and for white soldiers? And he said that he created his own studio as people were out in Hollywood protesting against bigotry and looking for black America to be included in Hollywood, whether it's Denzel Washington, Sam Jackson, Will Smith, or Jada Pinkett, or anybody of prominence. Halle Berry. I remember Halle Berry won an Oscar for playing, and she's one of the most beautiful women in the universe, but she won her only Oscar, as far as I know, for playing a downtrodden black woman who was married to a white guy that raped her and killed her son, but he was her savior. So as long as he was her savior financially, it's okay that he raped her and that he murdered her son, because he came to her rescue, and I can't remember the name of the actor, but and don't even remember the name of the movie, but I thought, how in the hell did she win an award for that?
Monsters Ball, Billy Bob Thornton.
Okay, Billy Bob, yes. So that, to me, is when they took that whole thing that we don't talk about, at least black people do in public and in private. A lot of white people don't talk about it until they're behind closed doors, but they feel uncomfortable.
Washington won his Oscar for being a criminal. With all the great work that he's done, he had to be a criminal to win an Oscar.
For being a bad police guy. I think that was in Training Day, as brilliant as Denzel is. But that award came from white Americans. Even Spike Lee, as great as he's been, he won his only award for Black Klansmen. You don't think that's a subconscious message? That the Klansmen will always and forever be on your mantle as you celebrate your only award given by Hollywood. And I know that's deeper than a lot of people care to see, but I really appreciate our conversations on it, Big C. And I hope that it's a spark plug to get more people to ignite things like a thunderstorm ignites things. I know, before I get into this golf tournament that happened down in Florida, a really good cause, I remember and again, I met good people and bad people in all skin complexions. I grew up around Bloods and Crips. That was black guys shooting each other. I grew up around some skinheads, some white guys that were also trying to act tough until they got cornered and had to defend themselves, and they cowered down at that time. But I've seen good and bad in all people. I really have, but for the grace of God, I'm still here today. But I remember, and maybe you can expound on this, I don't care what color somebody is. I've been able to interact with everybody, men and women. But for some of the Caucasian women that I have dealt with in my past, they just didn't want their parents to know, or they didn't want their, boyfriend or their friends to know, but they wanted to get as much as they could, if that makes sense to you. Does that ring a bell, Big C? Your thoughts?
Didn't I make that statement to you early on that it limited their opportunities in society if they've known they've been in a relationship with an African-American man?
I think that was in the movie that Denzel Washington played with Malcolm X. When he was Malcolm X in the movie, they had that chronology. Life is real, and that's a very good thought. I didn't really think about it too much, but I think I've experienced it. But sometimes you don't think about things because you're experiencing it, and you're focused on the experience more than thinking about why. Big C, that makes sense to you. I wanted to touch on this before we get into the Big C pause, and I would encourage every white American and black American to have real dialogue like what we just did, because that's the only way we can solve things, if we can ever solve it.
Well, we're beyond the dialogue stage in America, Charlton. We're a country that's 400 years old. We're well beyond the dialogue stage in this country. Everyone deals with action. And so if you haven't had dialogue since desegregation about Black Lives Matter or the separation of powers in America, or just bigotry and racism, that dialogue is given every day.
Yeah.
When you turn on the news, you see that dialogue every day. When you can sit there and videotape a white officer killing a black man in the street by choking him to death, Charlton, or even go back to Rodney King with officers beating this man like it was lunchtime in the middle of the street, saying he was resisting arrest as they took turns because they got tired hitting him with the billy clubs. Eric Gardner being choked out, and Ahmaud Arbery being shot in the middle of the street by a former officer and his son. So when we look at these things that occur every day, it's not about having dialogue. The dialogue is that black people are scared in America every day. You have two jobs in America if you are a black man. You have a job to support your family, and you have a full-time job trying to survive, stay out of trouble, and stay alive. That's a full-time job in America. And can you understand the stress of that in the black communities, and you wonder why you have so much alcoholism and drug addiction? I mean, you think about this thing that occurred over the weekend. Ryan Leaf, former number 2 overall pick in the NFL behind Peyton Manning years ago.
Yeah.
Went to prison about 5 years ago for drug abuse and domestic violence. He was arrested over the weekend for domestic violence, beating his wife's butt. And here it is, ESPN hired him last year for the football season.
I know. Wow, what a joke.
Here's the guy who got a break after being in prison, and normally networks don't do that, but here's a white guy. We got to give him a second, third chance. He's been in prison for drugs, for domestic violence, so we're going to give him a chance. And what happens? He goes back to jail again for beating up his wife over the weekend on domestic violence.
Yeah, I think that was down in Southern California. He'd also had burglary charges in the past of breaking in someone's home and taking their, I guess, prescription medication. But that's right. I forgot. I think he took Washington State to the Rose Bowl back in the day, I believe in the late 90s. And he took Washington State out of the Pac-10 at that time to the Rose Bowl. And I think he was arrested down in Southern California near Palm Springs or somewhere out in there. But that might be just like the Oval said. You could be a white guy, you could be crooked, dirty, and they make a room and an excuse for you, like the prosecutors down in Georgia. This is just something. I know people want to talk about sports too, but I want to do things that keep people safe. I saw this thing when I was thinking about the Rooney Rule. I think it was Mike Tomlin, the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of 4 men of color that coach an NFL team. And he said he likes the incentive rule for the Rooney Rule. And I was wondering, my white brethren coaches, when you want to give people opportunity, just treat black men the way you treated Ryan Leaf. Now, here's a guy that was a marginal NFL football player, and he's been in trouble most of his adult life that we know of. This is the stuff we know about. And the mothership had him on the air broadcasting for Pac-12 football, Big C. That's the same Pac-12 conference that I think has been at the forefront of trying to do things the right way, but you still have a Caucasian man with that track record that they're allowed to broadcast all their football games on the Pac-12 network. So if the NFL wants to know how to be fair in the hiring process, just treat black Americans the way you treat white guys, and I think it would ferret out the Rooney Rule. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you can go back and look and see how many guys at ESPN have that are minorities in their programming that have been arrested. They don't have them. But here's a white guy who had been to prison, everything else, drug addict, all that other stuff. They give him a third or fourth chance.
Yeah.
And he still doesn't care. He still goes out there and commits domestic violence against a woman, Charlton. So, this is what we talk about when you said earlier. Who's going to have the dialogue?
Yeah.
Okay? Why do you need dialogue? When white guys can do this, they can beat up women, still get a job. And if that happens from a black perspective, he's not getting a job and he's not getting out of jail. Ryan Leaf's out of jail already.
Yeah.
Even though he's committed this crime before, he's a habitual offender. So, how many chances do you get? How many chances do you get? And this is it. Networks hire him back because he's white. He was the number 2 draft pick overall in the NFL behind Peyton Manning. Two polar opposites as far as their career went.
Yeah.
And you saw him blow up when he was a rookie, that he wasn't going to make it. And his life has paralleled that. But they keep saying, well, you got to give him a chance. Somebody's got to give him a second chance. You got black quarterbacks can't even get a second chance at a job in the NFL. Colin Kaepernick, Cam Newton, who've done nothing wrong. But Ryan Leaf can beat the crap out of a woman, be a drug addict, go to prison, and the network still give him a job.
Wow. Let's take what's called the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. We'll come back and talk about some more things on this wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Do we live in a country for one shade of color? We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I love called Google or Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Really happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T, Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. When you reach out to them, tell them Big C Essential. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams do it. And you can watch TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. And also, for you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you'll find opportunities there as well. I know there's so much going on Memorial Day weekend, and it's nice when you have people tell. It's like the preacher says, when you're getting married, speak now or forever hold your peace. And a lot of people are not speaking when it comes to race and how to fix it, even after so many years of that garbage. But we'll do the best we can to always talk about things. Big C, I want to just give one great thought real quick when it comes to NBA. Patrick Ewing, he was in the hospital for COVID-19. He's been released. Georgetown basketball coach, former NBA great, Hall of Famer Patrick Ewing. He's only 57 years old, so he's not really much older than a lot of players that want to get right back out there playing the game. And I just want to wish him and his family well, and that it seems like there are people who are able to respond and rebound. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, Patrick Ewing, when you think about being at Georgetown University and the medical center that they have there, Charlton, you got the best medical care. COVID attacks everyone differently, Charlton. Everybody is not stricken where they're going to be on a ventilator and bedridden for weeks or months at a time.
Yeah.
So it all depends on the individual and what your immune system has in it.
Yeah, it really does. And as we were saying that thing about Ryan Leaf and that program by Tyler Perry, The Oval, and how it chronicles things about race, even in the White House. It's a fictional character, but it's like I've known some of my white friends. I mean, people do what they want to do. I've had friends from Florida and Georgia and Texas and California and New York, Boston, all over the place. And this was back in the days when some of my Caucasian teammates would ask me, hey, can you find a black woman that I can date, as if I'm not a pimp, I don't have an escort service, but there are some of the men that I played football with, so they were used to interacting with the black men, but they always wanted to know on the down low, hey, do you know any black women that I could date? And I would say, hey, find one you like and go ask them for a date. Have you ever seen that type of, because white guys try to hide that too, even though the original people on the planet came from Africa. Big C, your thoughts?
No, I've never been in that type of situation, Charlton. Everybody that I dealt with, went after what they wanted.
Yeah, and I just noticed with that thing that happened with the thing in I think you said in Minnesota. I didn't know about that. I knew about the situation in Georgia. But it's also Memorial Day, and sometimes we still have racial issues because people don't talk about it. I told you I went to the doctor for my National Colon Day checkup last week, Big C, and it was actually on Friday. And the doctor, they got to go inside your body to make sure everything's good. And they did, and everything is fine. But they have to go inside of the body and do their scope and their medical practice to make sure you're healthy. And I think until we do that with racism, it's always going to be around because it benefits some people. I want to get your thoughts on that before I go to this next subject that I think is important. Make sure your thoughts.
Racism is not going to go away, Charlton. There's a fight to keep racism strong and alive in America every day. And people hate losing stuff, Charlton. And when you think about white society in America, they hate losing the toehold on the power that they've had.
Yeah.
And when you think about the abolishment of things that they've done through, trying to, the fear-mongering that they did for decades, the Ku Klux Klan, and even when we had Civil Rights Act, Charlton, and when the Supreme Court got the Voting Rights Act, Charlton, they're taking power and equality away from black people and minorities.
Yeah.
And when you have states that are picking people off the voting poll, Charlton, where they're making it hard for people to vote. That is the one thing that creates equality in America. It doesn't take a job.
Yeah.
It takes voting rights, Charlton. And when people don't have voting rights, you don't have equality because your voice doesn't matter. And this is the reason why so many people become disenfranchised. If you have voting rights, Charlton, then you can have better employment.
Yeah.
Because now you have a say-so in what goes on in the economics of your community, the people who are in charge of your community. And so when those things are taken away from you, when you can't vote, you will never have equality in America. That is the one sustaining issue in America that creates inequality, Charlton, inequality, is the lack of voting rights for minorities in America.
Yeah, and we got to always make sure we talk about that out. Now, I don't know the ethnicity of what happened in Chicago over the weekend, but there were 10 killed in Chicago over Memorial Day weekend. Police report 49 shooting victims between Friday and Monday. I don't know what ethnic group they belong to, but I know what you're telling me what happened in Minnesota. Everybody has to just take the Big C pause and try to talk about things. My parents always told me, you got to talk about it. You got to talk about it. It's easier to talk when you don't have handcuffs on. It's harder to talk with handcuffs on, and I love having those real conversations.
He was talking with handcuffs on, Charlton, telling the officer he couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
And the officer told him to get his black ass up and get in the car. While he had his knee in his throat, he said, I can't move, I can't breathe. I will get in the back seat if you let me up, if you take your knee out of my throat.
Yeah.
But the officer decided to kill him instead.
Yeah, that's horrible. I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. We've talked about it so many times, and I always make sure that I can as much share that with my own children, how to deal with things. I want to take you to this tournament that happened down in Florida. Now, we talked about Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning. They did a great cause. They raised $20 million for COVID-19 relief. But before I even get into that story, would you believe, and everybody has their own thoughts, I know the country has from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea, Big C, people get out and do what they want to do. Florida reports 424 new cases, 7 more deaths in COVID-19. And this is down there where they had the golf tournament. I know it was rainy and they did it for a good cause. But it just seems like that got more attention, the golf tournament, than the fact that they've had 7 more deaths and 424 more new cases in Florida alone. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the reason why the numbers are so low in Florida because you're refusing the test. You have to understand where you're getting the numbers from. Well, when you get these numbers out of these Republican states, Charlton, it's because they're refusing to test, as the president told them. If we don't test as much, we won't have as many people test positive, and we can't show the number of deaths that come from it.
Yeah.
So as this pandemic continues to rise, and it's not going away, Charlton, it's going to manifest itself, and it's going to spread even more over the next couple of months because people are not socially distancing. They're going out without masks. They don't care about others. They keep saying, it's not going to touch me. It's even touching kids now, Charlton. Minors are getting it, and they're struggling with this. So they try to say it was just older, elderly people at first. Maybe it was. But now it has passed through American society, Charlton, and this is what people don't understand. It will affect anybody. You don't wear a mask to protect yourself. You wear a mask to protect the other person from you.
Yeah.
And so until Americans have enough saliency to understand that they care about each other, that's just like racism. If you don't care about other nationalities, Charlton, that's racism. And the same thing about social distancing and not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
That's racism also because you're not caring enough about your fellow human being.
Yeah, I think as Black Americans, you learn at an early age, as long as you shut up and dribble, like Laura Ingraham said, then oftentimes, even Sayla Perrin, she liked to come over to the dark side, Big C, back in the day, and she was stomping with John McCain, but it's all fair in love and war. I want to get into this thing with the golf tournament. I thought it was a beautiful thing to raise $20 million over just a couple of hours. I know Charles Barkley is doing some commentating with Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Now, that to me, I think I was hearing is one of the highest rated events. Of course, there's no sports on lately, but it rated really high. A lot of people were interested. I was surprised at how good a golfer that Peyton Manning is. And while I praise him, I want to ask you something on the backside, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Peyton Manning's like anybody who's retired, Charlton. You can go out and play golf and you can improve your game. I'd like to put Peyton Manning up against some baseball players or some hockey players if you really want to see some guys that can play golf because they swing a stick for their livelihood, Charlton. So their eye-hand coordination is probably the best of all the athletes when it comes to playing golf. I'd love to see Wayne Gretzky out there playing in this tournament. I think he and Peyton Manning would have been a great challenge for each other. Wayne Gretzky lives on Riviera out in Los Angeles, so he plays golf on a regular basis. But it was a great thing for charity, Charlton, when you think about it. It was the highest-rated cable, sports show of all time because the hunger for sports. You had nothing else on, so people wanted to watch it. Plus, you had household names that people could identify with. Dustin Johnson, Charles Barkley doing the broadcast.
Yeah.
You got Peyton against Manning, two of the greatest quarterback rivalries all time in the NFL. And Phil and Tiger, speaks for itself. It's one of the greatest rivalries we've ever seen in the field of sports, and those guys went out there and they delivered. One of the things it did, though, it showed that Tom was human because it shows that he's not the greatest at everything. He had one shot that saved him on the day, but he shot well over 100 out there.
Yeah, I think Charles Barkley had something to do on the 18th. If he could just go bogey, he would have given out some money, or maybe he did it anyway. But I just thought to have those characters down there, all those guys have done well in life and have all been champions at some level other than Barkley. But what I think, and I know nobody's going to do what I'm going to do with me and you, but Charles Barkley, when you talk about Black Americans and white Americans and Memorial Day, we all want to say, hey, God bless the veterans and our thoughts and prayers are with you. But only Charles Barkley, who has not won a championship, has ever spoken about race in the United States. Now, I wonder, we talked about what is it going to take. Oprah Winfrey spoke up for white women, saying that they've been assaulted by white men for the most part, even though Bill Cosby's the one in prison and a couple other knuckleheads. You don't hear much about Matt Lauer and a couple other guys, too, that were on O'Reilly down there at Fox. They paid him $30 million to sexually assault women. But I want to get this thought. Charles Barkley is the only one of those great athletes that has been precious enough to talk about race. And people say, oh, we can't talk about race because it'll cost your career. It has not cost his career. He's even broadcasting guys that are so silent. If people want to Google things, Peyton Manning had his own issues in college. They won't talk about it because he's white. People can Google it if they want to. Tiger Woods was ostracized because he was doing, the dating thing. White women were trying to offer him to go to bed with him. And he had people say, hey, that's not right. You shouldn't be doing what we've been doing for 400 years. And then Tom Brady's been very quiet. They've all been quiet like Michael Jordan. So if we really wanted to get a prominent white person, it's Memorial Day weekend. Can't we all get along to speak about racial issues and how to make things better like Charles Barkley does? Why won't we get that out of Tom Brady or Peyton Manning and people ogle over them for hitting a golf ball? Big C, your thoughts?
No, you got to get it out of your lawmakers. And, we can't keep putting all this emphasis on athletes. And athletes have to carry the mogul for everyone and every racial and social issue in America. They're just an athlete. What's wrong with our lawmakers? I mean, is everybody's oogling over the presidential race that's coming up.
Yeah.
And everybody's, thumping for the black vote. What are you going to do for the black voter? Not what the black voter can do to get you in office.
Yeah.
What are you going to do for the black voter? That's the thing that needs to be said. So politicians, American society takes their lead from politicians.
Yeah.
As you had President Trump telling everybody to go out and be thuggish, be racist, and all of that, be separatist in society, they did it. They took their country back, as he told them. You can be the white guy of the 60s and of the 50s in America. He didn't say what he was going to do for all America. He told what part of white America what they could do. As we got Vice President Biden stumping for the black vote,
yeah.
He needs to tell black voters what he's going to do for them up front. Don't wait till you get in office and say, well, I'm trying to do this. No, tell us what you're going to do for us now. That's what needs to be done. We can't keep calling on athletes because athletes, you know them because they perform in a sport.
Yeah.
You don't know them because they're social activists. You know them because they performed in a sport. So that's what people are tuning in to see an athlete for what he does for a living. Politicians do for a living is something for their constituents and protecting their constituents. So I don't look for any athletes to be the beacon in far as telling me where to go or guide me in society. I'm looking for politicians because they make the difference. Because once that athlete is not on television,
yeah.
You don't hear from him anymore.
Yeah, that's very true, too. Big C, I want to just get your thoughts real quick in the final several minutes. Reggie Bush, another great athlete out of Southern California, went to University of Southern California, and he believes that paying college athletes could destroy some people. And there's allegedly that he got some paperbacks too, Big C. Do you agree with that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Isn't that kind of hypocritical coming from a guy that got paid over $300,000 while
yeah.
he was in college, had to give back his Heisman Trophy,
yeah.
and cost his team a national championship, Charlton? They had to rescind that also. So that's kind of hypocritical coming from a guy who took advantage of a system that did not exist at the time. So now he wants to be anti against the guys who can get the money legally,
yeah.
Not like he did underneath the table.
yeah.
And he wants
yeah.
to come out and say it's going to destroy some guys.
Yeah.
So did it destroy him getting the money illegally? I don't think so. I think it will only make the guys more prescient if they're getting the money above the table and people know what they're getting. It makes them more responsible and accountable.
Yeah, I think Reggie Bush could also take that same message and tell Fox Sports, don't pay me because you're going to destroy my life. He wants to do the Fox Sports show for free. I don't think that's right there, Reggie, but say that. But hey, it's all fair, love, and war. Do as I say, not as I do, Big C. COVID-19 testing center was opened up today at Dodger Stadium, of all places, in Los Angeles. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that kind of lends to that baseball may not be back. When you think about them opening up the largest COVID testing center in California at Dodger Stadium in the parking lot, they can test 6,000 people a day in that facility, Charlton. So when you think about the population in that area, and so when they start testing 6,000 people a day, you can bet that the numbers of positive cases is going to go up in California if you're testing just 6,000 a day in the Los Angeles basin.
Yeah, and LA's a basin of 20 million people in the Los Angeles basin alone, and Dodger Stadium. Who would have thought that if the Dodgers had lost the World Series to the Washington Nationals, that they would be next at Chavez Ravine for COVID-19 testing? It's a strange world, Big C. Dr. Mark Schissel, if there's no campus instruction, there will not be intercollegiate athletics, at least for Michigan, he told the Wall Street Journal. He also expressed to some degree of doubt as to whether they will be collegiate athletics anywhere, at least in the fall. And that's from Michigan, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, if you think of Michigan is an academic institution. People don't think about it as that. It's one of the top 5 academic institutions in America, along with Stanford and a couple, Ivy League schools. Michigan ranks right there academically. And I can understand when you have a president who is an academician, and he's a geophysicist.
Yeah.
So he's an intelligent man.
Yeah.
So he understands the science. He's not there about just the athletics at the big house, Charlton, and in the Chrysler Arena. He's there about the student body. And if he feels that the student body is not safe to be on campus, he understands that the athletes are part of the student body. And that's what people really have to take a step. So when you talk about people standing up, speaking about Black Lives Matter, Charlton, this is somebody who has done that. The president of the University of Michigan stepping up saying Black Lives Matter. because I'm not going to put those black kids out there on the field and risk their health just to play an athletic game.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to take – it's as the world turns. It just depends on your perspective, how much money you have coming in. And if it's not coming in, again, baseball says they'll lose $4 billion if they don't have half of the season resumed. That's about a $9 billion industry for Major League Baseball.
When you think about Michigan, it has the largest stadium in the United States, 114,000 people that they can cram into the big house on a Saturday afternoon, Charlton.
Yeah.
And here's a professor of the university, president of the university, saying the economics do not outweigh the loss of human life.
Yeah.
And you think about the University of Michigan, their athletic program, their football program profited $127 million last year. $127 million. So they can survive a season without playing. Their athletic department can.
Yeah.
But here it is. He's saying he can't survive with the loss of life on his watch. And I appreciate that. So when you talk about people stomping for Black Lives Matter, and people speaking up, this is a man, the president of the University of Michigan, is doing that. We don't need an athlete because an athlete can't stop the athletics at the university. He can't say, okay, we're not going to play football. You can't get the quarterback, the running back, the defensive back to say, okay, we're not going to play this season.
Yeah.
But you get the president of the university. And this is a guy that white society doesn't want to hear from.
Yeah.
When you have that, because he's stomping for Black lives. I don't need an athlete. I need more presidents from universities saying this.
Yeah, we need more people in a position of power to start saying that, because it's so true. It's a lot like we started the show on Memorial Day weekend, Big C, and paying homage to our veterans. You told me about an incident that went on up in Minnesota. We know what happened down in Georgia. People are all over the beaches in Southern California, in Florida, and even Alabama's all over the place. But I do remember the thing about race and how to solve it. I was telling you this Caucasian woman that's very prominent, knows a lot of African-American athletes, or she at least name drops a lot, but I know she's in the business, and how we want to say, don't say Black Lives Matter, say all lives matter. It's a lot like in my own circle, being in different environments, white ladies have been very open to be of assistance, and some white guys too, for the most part, but oftentimes the white women that wanted to be have an affinity toward me, they wanted to do it in private. They didn't want to do it in the open, if that makes sense to you. And I think for the same thing, white men want to see us perform in the open, but not give us contracts in the private. That makes sense to you? Your thoughts?
Well, they don't, Charlton. But as I say, when you, as a black man, and you're relying on a black athlete to be the voice of your culture, to go out and speak to people that say, okay, I need you guys to be more concerned about us socially, not athletically, versus where you can have white college professors, men of power, who oversee millions of dollars in budgets, hundreds of millions of dollars of budget every year. Not only that, oversee thousands of lives that they govern, from the students to the administrators. That they have power. When you think about the power that they possess in the state, and then state employees, that they're probably the second most powerful, third most powerful person in the state, next to the governor and the attorney general. So these are the people that you need to cultivate, to bring forward, to speak and protect Black lives. Not athletes. Athletes, once their playing days are over, how many do you know about other than Shaq and a few others?
Yeah, that's very well said. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the app that I love called Google. Or Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he will do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be getting this still picture. Big C, in the final minute, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman has canceled the remainder of regular season, but he's proposing a 2014 playoff bracket for hockey. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Gary Bettman, stated a couple of weeks ago that canceling the season was the easiest thing to do, and so he finally did that. He said if hockey is to come back, is that they will just go right into the playoffs. They will expand it from 16 to 24 teams. That way that the fans will get their full allotment of Stanley Cup play when it comes back. But he has not committed to the playoffs are going to start, Charlton. He's leaving that to the medical science. And I understand Gary Bettman. When you think about Gary Bettman, and the league that he governs, Charlton, as a commissioner,
Yeah.
the National Hockey League. 95% white, Charlton. Think about that. 95% of its players are white. They don't even have a black head coach. So when you talk about minority hiring in the NFL, the NHL doesn't even have one black coach. So the NHL, when they're looking at the players' health, it's because it's a 95% white league, Charlton. So they're going to take all precautions to keep the players healthy. There's not this rush that you get in the NFL and the NBA because you got 75% black players and put them out there, and if you lose one or two, oh, well, we'll figure it out after that.
Yeah, I think for Memorial Day, everybody can go back and listen to the I Have a Dream speech, Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, I'm looking forward to the sports universe, Charlton, to be safe and sane and not rush back to say, okay, we have to have sports. I'd love for it to really take the rest of the year off, as much as we all love and depend on it, Charlton, but we also love life a little bit more.
We all love life, and as I said, I have a dream. And you can have a dream, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America, as Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, at every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.